hell yeah, grip it and rip it. Yeah, just crack open a cold one. Right, right on, like, hell yeah. That's incredible. Yeah, hell yeah, Mew. Yeah, get another
I tried
one.
to do that away from the microphone.
Load another one in the
good.
chamber, cock it back.
We're all here for it.
Yeah. I have no idea where I was going to go now. I feel like the sound of a can opening just like shattered every thought that was going to just fucking start. Hi everyone, I'm Kitsune.
And I'm Vee.
And this week, our conversation with the internet's favorite cat girl, Miyuki.
We touch on a lot of interesting topics.
From Miyuki's taste in charcuterie, cheese, and gin,
to whether they'll actually have that date with Indigo.
As always, if you enjoy the show, please consider liking, subscribing, leaving us a review.
And give us a rating on any app that you listen to, Apple Podcasts or whatever other app you listen to.
Whatever homebrew, crypto-native podcast solution that you end up liking. And as always, our plug here, if you have a story that you want to share, or if you feel like getting into the spotlight like you did today, please reach out to us. We're always looking for new and interesting guests, and we want to help you share your story with the larger community.
And everyone has a story to tell.
And now, without any further ado, here's Miyu. You know, how did you get here? Like, how did you come to this space, or where did you start, or, you know, like how did you become who you are now in crypto Twitter?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was always, I kind of come from a gambling background, so I was into sports betting, and like lots of NBA and baseball, and creating models and things. And then I was toying with the idea of going into financial markets. And then when COVID happened in March 2020, sport just ended. There was just no sport. So that kind of forced my hand a little bit. So I started looking into financial markets and found crypto. I think it was in like the middle of 2020, and just bought a little bit and started researching it, and was very much in the like Bitcoin maxi type circles, you know, a lot of the philosophical stuff around hard money, etc., which I found really, really interesting. And then I kind of wanted to become a better trader, and it seemed like Twitter was the place to kind of meet people and learn and find some friends. So in March 2021, I basically left my old career and just started up a new Twitter profile that wasn't connected to my real name, and I really wanted to make some friends and learn about trading. That I've since learned that I'm not a very good trader, and my efforts are probably spent better somewhere else. So I'm kind of now focusing more on the building side, which aligns more with my previous experience, I think.
I guess it's, an interesting path to come to, but I'm sure also not like a terribly uncommon one, right? Like people starting in the space from kind of a quote unquote like gambling background or like a, you know, a speculative background. Specifically though, like sports betting seems unique, or at least not one that I've heard before, right? Like the idea of going from running, you know, stats or odds on real world teams to like, you know, the virtual space dealing with like digital currency feels like kind of a leap, you know?
Yeah, there's definite differences, that's for sure. But there's a lot of similarities, I think, and I definitely learnt a lot from gambling, just in the way markets work and things like that, liquidity, etc. I know a few of the, like I think Sam Tabasco comes from a sports betting background as well, so not entirely unique, but I think it's a good introduction to markets, honestly.
Well, you know, that explains why he's such a shark, you know, and playing on PvP so much of the time. Like, yeah, he's like a bookie. He's graduated from like being, you know, the gambler placing bets to now like the guy running the table in like the back of the restaurant somewhere in Chinatown, like taking people's money on bad odds.
And it seems like you have that with the types of speculative markets drawing a common crowd of people, and then eventually people kind of filter out into, like, as you say, you're like moving more into a building state. I think a lot of people have entered the space kind of with that mentality, like, I'll just trade these assets, and then it didn't work out as well as maybe we should start building things instead.
I mean, that pivot I feel like is so, I mean, that was like my pivot for sure. But I guess like, you know, Mew, in your case, like, was that transition, you know, acknowledging, hey, maybe I'm not the best trader, like, was that transition kind of like a relief? Did you find like it is actually much more personally fulfilling for you to build, or you know, like, did you end up finding like, oh, I want to move in this more constructive, let's say, direction? Was that like, did that feel very natural of a move for you?
Yeah, it did. I come from like a quite technical background, and a quite lots of design, I guess, in my background. So I think coding and building things and designing things feels really natural to me. So I think making that transition was ultimately like really great for me, and just recognizing that if I don't really have what it takes, I don't think, to be a trader. So recognizing that early and then leaning into my previous experience a bit, I think has been really, really helpful for me.
Yeah, you know, it makes me wonder about like, there is almost something, not that it, you know, is a perfect corollary, but like understanding our, you know, maybe for me, it was definitely like understanding our limitations. Like, I definitely was like, I am going to trade like a motherfucker and I'm going to be so good at it. And then the minute I got into crypto Twitter, and you would see people whose strategies and thought processes like vastly dwarfed mine, you know, I felt like this kind of like, it is liberating to be able to kind of abandon this notion and move in a direction that feels like more suited to like myself.
I think that's kind of the beauty of this space. Is I think a lot of people do come in it from a trading point of view, but there's so many avenues that you can go, and they can be technical or non-technical, and there's room for everyone, I think, and every style. I don't think everyone has to be a trader, and I don't think everyone has to be a builder either. I think there's so many different roles out there that you can do, and I think that's one of the great things about this space.
So to kind of, I mean, it kind of comes off as one, but do you think you could like pivot, or like if you were to give advice, a bit like advice to someone trying to enter the space, perhaps thinking they have to be a trader or something else, like are there things you would encourage folks to do, or?
I think just getting involved. I think it's easy to feel like you don't know enough, or that your experience isn't suitable or something like that. But I feel like you can sort of draw on all the previous things you've learned and bring them to the space and add to, whether it's a project or, you know, a team or a fund or something. And even just, you know, being a part of the wider CT community. So I think maybe don't be scared to be yourself, and Don't try and fit into some box, because we haven't really defined all the boxes yet.
True enough, very true.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, I think that also raises like an interesting question. Like, V and I tend to talk a lot about like identity, and I tend to ask people a lot about like the formation of an identity, or even like a personal brand. And like to whatever extent you want to go into it, like was there like a lot of kind of thought or planning of like aesthetics, or like in the way that you present this kind of like figure that you are on crypto Twitter? Because you have kind of evolved into like this very like I mean, you get honoraries all the time. Like people seem very drawn to your like imagery, and very drawn to you as a person. Like how much of that, I guess, like is you? How much of that is like Miyuki, this avatar? Like what, how much of that was like developed?
I think it was very organic from my side. I kind of used Miyuki as an outlet to be myself without attaching it to my real identity. I think that afforded me a lot of liberties to just kind of say what I want and be whoever I want. So in essence, I think Miyuki is kind of more like the real me than the side I show in real life. I think there's a lot of luck in what I've built with Miyuki. I think in the identity, I think I lucked out with the aesthetic and the name, and I don't know. I feel very lucky, and I feel like a lot of it is sort of undeserved, to be honest. But I'll take it.
I mean, undeserved or not, but I mean, I think it is deserved, in the sense that like this space tends to reward people who participate, more genuinely, and people that like seem to present an image of themselves that seems like unfettered and real. And I think you do that. I think, there is a bigger point there about like the liberating aspects of being, anonymous or having an alternative identity, which is like really compelling to me. I think probably compelling to you as well, V.
Anonymous but authentic, because
right.
I mean, we talked about this before, the fear from consequences. I was just going to touch back on, I was thinking about it, having people enter the space and thinking perhaps they're not qualified or they're not capable, and Mia, you said we're building a lot of these boxes. It's interesting too, just the perspective of how much can cross over between various industries, because like we saw with the recent the Coinbase backpedaling of hires. They were going on a hiring spree and then backpedaled, and you saw a bunch of these posts pop up of, hey, Web3 people, you have skills you can bring to Web2, come work for Amazon, stuff like that. Just in the sense of people perhaps think they need unique skills to make it in this space, and they really don't. They can utilize the knowledge much like you have, in a sense, your technical background and experience with design and such, to form your own in the crypto environment.
Yeah, I definitely think like there's a lot more roles out there than it appears, and it's easy to think when you're scrolling through CT that everyone knows everything and there's no space for you, but that's not really the case. I think there's definite room for different viewpoints and opinions, and I think you can rely on what you do know a lot more than you think.
And I think that probably speaks to like the grander aspirations of the space, which is like wide, broad ranged inclusivity, right? Like the idea that everybody is welcome as long as they want to be a participant and want to engage genuinely and want to like actually make something. But definitely there is like that element, I'm sure, that everyone has experienced at some time of like, what is my actual place here? Why do I belong, or why am I getting the attention or whatever that I am? And it is kind of, I imagine, a humbling experience, particularly, the larger and larger, more recognizable you get. Do you feel like kind of as that awareness of you and like that reach has grown, do you feel kind of like a higher level of scrutiny or pressure, or is it actually even like more affirming than that?
There definitely was a point. I don't remember exactly when sort of the gravity that, thousands of people would read what I said. It kind of hit me one day, and it put a little bit of trepidation in how I approach things, but I think that was fairly short-lived. And I think that's a byproduct of just being genuine. I've tried this entire time to just be a genuine person, and if you're not trying to act a certain way or, fulfill some role or something specific, then you can just be yourself and not have to worry about that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the fundamental desire just to like connect with a person, I think, is such a driving force in crypto Twitter, as I'm sure it is in many spaces. But like, like, not to self plug, but like, I made a meme about you a while ago that was like, depressed, and then when I see one of your tweets, I get very happy. I think there is something to be said for like people genuinely feeling like pleased and connected and wanting to have this like relationship with a person. And like how effectively you capitalize on that, I think, is really tied directly to your success.
I think like for me, the main reason I joined this space was to find friends. So it's really nice, to read those sort of things, and that me just being genuine and being nice to people has a positive effect on people, which is really heartwarming, and it really just affirms, my thoughts around that I did the right thing in joining this space and finding friends, and it's really nice.
It almost seems like, you talked about the realization of thousands of people following and reading what you say. I would think there's a point where you almost feel a sense of responsibility. It's like, oh wow, I like being in a position of, it's thousands of followers on Twitter. Is it like anything super drastic? No, but that position of power, perhaps feeling a sense of responsibility to tread lightly with what you say, in a sense. I feel like
I try not to, talk about specific projects or things like that. I definitely don't want to call people out and, stuff like that. So I guess there is some sense of responsibility in that. And I don't want to spread misinformation or stuff like that, which, can be common. So I guess there is some level of responsibility. But also I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know who does, but a lot of my posts is just me being naive and dumb, I think.
I mean, I think like certainly in the like aftermath of everything that happened with Luna and UST, I think we saw a lot of backlash against these very large influencer and guru accounts that really called that idea of responsibility into question, right? Like you are not just abstractly yelling into the void, like those people that brand themselves as experts or somehow like having a defined edge, like you end up directly impacting people's lives and people's livelihoods and their financial well-being. And I think, there are a lot of people that maybe do not want that level or are not cognizant of that level of responsibility and don't practice good stewardship in the space. And then of course, by contrast, there are people who do, like, many people have like mixed opinions or whatever impressions of like Gainsey, but Gainsey is very clear, like, I am not a role model. I'm not telling you what to do. Like and then by contrast, you see a lot of influencers who are like who are clearly using their followers as like exit liquidity or clearly using their followers to pump. So yeah, I mean, I think that idea of responsibility is key. And also like letting people know what they're getting into, right? Like, I think you're very clear. I think even your pinned post right now is like about shit posting. So it's like, yeah, I mean, you should know what you're getting into, right?
Yeah, I think people I think it's just human nature to kind of latch on to people and opinions and the way that they shape your own opinions. And it's honestly a bit unfair to people. Most people in the space don't ask to become a figure,
Yeah, it's not something you choose.
Yeah, it's just a byproduct, and the bigger you get, the more inherent responsibility you have. But I don't think that's a fair way to approach it, and there's no getting around that. But I think it's important to recognize that most people really don't know what they're doing. And if you're going to read opinions from someone, like, take them with a grain of salt and pass them.
Yeah, I mean, what is the saying? Like, if you can't tell what the product is, you are the product, right? Like,
Trust but verify, even.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, if somebody is putting something out, to like consider their motivation is so key. And even like, I think a lot of people can have dissenting opinions or can have out there or outlandish opinions, right? Like, I was talking to Mono about like seed oils poisoning people, which is like out there, but at the same time, there's no sense of like, oh, this person is trying to deliberately mislead me for any, self-gain. And I think that when that happens, it's so naked in the space, it's so evident, but maybe that is coming from like a position of privilege of being like, oh, we're involved in the space, we can kind of scent this out. And meanwhile, like thousands of retail followers are just marching to death buying, whatever Wolf of All Street's bag or whatever the shill of the week is.
Yeah, some of which could be from experience and some of which could be from lessons learned. Like, oh, I've been in that position before. I don't want to, I don't want to let other people, I'm wiser now. I don't want to let other people down that road.
That's actually a great point, Vee, not to interrupt, but that actually is like leads to an interesting question. Like, Miyu, if you talk about, this transition from trader, did you have like, I don't know, one burn too many, like one, liquidation candle that broke the camel's back? Was there like some catastrophe that made you go, you know what, actually on second thought, fuck this?
No, not actually. I think coming from my gambling background and creating models, it's always about expected value and edge, and knowing your edge, defining your edge, quantitatively. So when I realized that I didn't have an edge, I think that was the key. So I didn't actually lose. I didn't get liquidated or lose a bunch of money or rage quit. It was just a realization that I don't have an edge, and over the long term, I will lose money. So
thinking ahead, in a sense.
Yeah. It's I risk management is a large thing in gambling because it's binary outcomes typically. So managing your risk is really important. So defining your edge comes into that very heavily. So when I kind of realized that in this extremely discretionary trading style that I was trying to do, I didn't have an edge, that was kind of the signal for me to move on to something else that is more plus EV.
Absolutely. I wanted to cycle back because we talked about briefly people achieving like a popular status that perhaps either unwanted or undeserving through luck, and then you become this like mystical figure in the space. I wanted to look at it from a positive spin though, in the sense of you have people who are following you, who are reading your opinions. Perhaps you're being more scrutinized, perhaps you're being more careful with what you say. But given where you are, and I'm sure there are various folks who try and picture, come up with a picture of what they want to be remembered for. Is there anything, given the impact that you have had and probably will have going forward, is there any sort of like significant impact you want to have, like on the space or on people in a perhaps beneficial way, or do you want to be remembered for anything you've done in the space? Or
that's a difficult question. I think one of the like benchmarks of my entire CT presence has just been being genuine and wholesome, and I guess that would kind of be the thing I would want to be remembered for, which I don't know, maybe that's lame, but I feel like that's a good thing to strive for. Just being a genuine person and being nice to people. I like to support people and make friends, and I think that's probably if I would want people to think something of me, that would be it. Is that I'm genuine.
I think questions of like legacy are always complicated, particularly in the context of anonymity. But I mean, if community, friendship, comfy vibes, I think are always right plus EV. right? Is why so many of us transitioned into that space. But I think for probably a large amount of let's say non-niche crypto Twitter, the question is so much more about like adoption or what people are going to do, and I guess that leads into like, where do you think we're headed? Like, do you think that retail will just like gravitate towards consistently like the next 1000x, or will people actually find meaning on a normie level on the blockchain? Like, will there be will one day everybody be gambling on Ponzi's side by side with us, or will like retail actually like derive value and utility?
I think it's both, to be honest. I don't think you can really have one without the other. Speculation is just fun, to be honest. Maybe that's my gambling background talking, but I think over the longer horizon, there will definitely be, this core fundamental, the facets of crypto that kind of Bitcoin started with, of, immutable truth and, being available to everyone and that stuff. And I think on the long term that will continue. But at the same time, the casino will also continue, I think. Maybe not in the short term, the macro outlook, but in the long term, definitely.
I guess just building off of that then, like if you had to take a stab in the dark and guess like one dark horse from behind application that will come from blockchain technology that will impact our lives, what would it be? Like, you always hear people talking about, oh, we can apply this to logistics, or this can be used for, healthcare or record keeping. But like, is there something that maybe you think comes out of this that is not like something widely discussed, or like one of those like very, bandied about ideas of like, oh, blockchain solves this?
Yeah, that's a bit of a tough one. I feel like everything maybe has already been touched on to some extent. There's like, we can fix the supply chain, or music or stuff like that. So I feel like everything, I haven't got anything off the wall that I could suggest. I think the most exciting stuff for me is from the creator point of view. I think directly supporting and communicating with creators is really great, and it's something I've been trying to do my whole life in Web 2 terms, is using things like Bandcamp to pay for music so that the artist directly gets the money and stuff like that. So I feel like leveraging crypto for that is really exciting, even if no one's figured it out yet.
I mean, that is like one of the only things maybe that we've seen as some type of like demonstrable success, is watching like visual artists be able to monetize their work directly through NFTs, and be able to like, get some type of residual income from it, and be able to charge a direct price without having to have like some type of agent or gallerist or, what have you. Mm-hmm. But it feels like in those situations, like their own fan base's public sentiment turns on them like so quickly. Like I feel, you see an artist shift to NFTs and half the comments are like, I'm unfollowing. How can you personally be burning down the rainforest by using NFTs? Which I think is really unfair, right? Like that's a double standard. Mm-hmm. Like if you love this artist and you want them to succeed, why are you hating when they finally get the check? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's really sad, to be honest. And, as people as enveloped in the space as we are, I feel like we understand that most of that is just based on misinformation and, a lack of knowledge on the technical side. But I think it's just really unfair from a philosophical and even emotional side to deny these artists, that freedom, I guess.
I mean, I have to wonder too how much of it might be coming from a jealousy, envious, which almost to tie into misinformation, perhaps, mm-hmm. These artists have come up with NFTs. They're clearly like smart programmers, like not just misinformation from like the negatives of crypto, but thinking possibly like misinformation of what it takes to actually create an NFT, that type of thing. Because some people might think you have to be extremely technically adept to, they're making an artwork, but they're also writing the code for the contract and publishing it and all that stuff, when really the tools we have today are vastly simpler. So I can't help but think there's some level of envy or jealousy based in misinformation involved as well.
Yeah, maybe some sort of tall poppy syndrome or something. I think it's a knee-jerk reaction for people to lash out against success, which is quite sad. But I'm hoping that will change as we move forward.
Yeah, I think, that knee-jerk thing is kind of no different. The envy of having like this seemingly simple path to success is no different than people who go to museums and go, well, my kid could have painted that, right? Like, it very much is, the counterpoint being like, if it is that easy, then why don't you go ahead and make an NFT and sell it for 2 ETH if you are so willing to castigate someone for like getting rich quick or getting lucky in that regard.
Yeah, exactly. And I think people unfairly lump together like these, 10K scam NFT projects and like one-of-one artists, and everything in between. It's a huge array of different approaches and styles, and some of them are scams, but a lot of them are genuine artists and people trying to do their thing. So I feel like people confuse that a lot.
And that's the...
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, on a kind of a personal level, do you like interact with NFTs like to a great extent? Do you feel like you are a believer in a genuine form of like the digital art movement? Like, like we kind of touched on earlier, I've certainly seen people who are very happy to make like honoraries of you, but like you on a personal level, would you describe yourself as like an NFT believer or like a collector?
I definitely like collecting like one-of-ones. I think is definitely my style. I feel like there's some good projects out there, but I feel like it's hard for these larger scale projects to maintain that personal connection. And a lot of people find that personal connection in the group, but that's not something that I've found personally. The way that I like to interact with NFTs, I guess, is through commissions. And that's something I want to do more of moving forward. But have built up some artist friends, built up these relationships with artists over time, and being able to directly support them and to receive like great genuine work that's what's really exciting for me.
I was talking with an acquaintance a couple weeks back who was like, what we should do? We should bring back like the days of like artists as pets, in the sense of like, here are these like wealthy millionaires, billionaires, in our case, crypto patrons that just like, hi, I will provide you an artist with a living for years and years and years and just make me art. That's
yeah, we should bring patronage back. It should be fashionable to just have like some weirdo that lives in your estate with an easel that you just keep fed like laudanum and wine and food, and they just are producing like works for you to show off at your parties.
Yes.
I would honestly love nothing more than that. I wish I had more means at the current time to do that, but that's definitely something that I want. There's definitely artists out there that I would love to support like on an ongoing basis, and not just from like some sort of charity sense, but as like, I really appreciate your work and I want more of it, like from a selfish point of view even. Maybe that's my slight narcissism coming in, but I just love seeing different renditions of Miyu, and then
as
just
a very different person, I completely understand that. I would love more of my beautiful fox boy as much as possible. Part of that question, I guess, then goes to like, what is the longevity here? Like, as nice as it is to imagine that we all finally make it to the point where we just have a stable of weird artists, like, certainly not to the extent that like, I don't know, brain dead media outlets always say like the NFT market is dead and is over. Like, you see a Kotaku article about it every other week. Like, is there, maybe sustainability there? Because at what point, do we separate from like, oh, I'm buying for speculative purposes, I'm a JPEG flipper, versus people who are like, oh, I'm buying and collecting, like from a perspective of like actual longevity, is that even possible?
I feel like you're never really going to separate those. Like, I'm sure even in the traditional art world, a lot of it is speculation, and there's, numerous reasons why the traditional art world is just as scammy or untoward as the NFT one. So I think it's just inherent with human nature. There's always going to be speculators, and there's always going to be art appreciators, and everything in between, I think.
And you already see that in, like, you talked about, like, the 10K scammy projects, you go into a lot of the Discords, and they're just full of speculators, traders. They're only talking about the floor. I mean, How can you gauge someone who truly appreciates, like, the art or the team and that type of thing? But it makes it even harder then to find a community, because most of them are going to attract the speculators, and if that's all that the quote-unquote community talks about, then that's the environment, that's the vibe that's going to be fostered there. So it's I agree in the sense of you're definitely always going to have that type of speculation no matter where you go. But yeah, a lot of it probably is also just luck, hitting the right market, the right vibes, the right people at the right time.
Yeah, definitely. I think you sort of see the same thing in any creative industry. Even in music, you have these popular artists, and you have these bandwagoner fans that are just fans because that's the popular thing at the moment. And that's not to diminish their appreciation of the music at the time, but I think it's just human nature. It does make it difficult if you're actually looking to form a community with your project or join a community. I think, like, for me personally, any NFT I buy, I just mark it straight to zero. I found the healthiest way to deal with it. But it's inherently a speculative asset. So I think you can't really be upset at people treating it that way.
For sure. Especially, I mean, it is an interesting perspective looking or treating it monetarily that way. There's a difference between, as you say, like, buy an NFT, immediately you mark that as zero. But, there's a difference between, like, this is money I've burned or lost or I'm never going to get back, versus this is money I'm genuinely paying to support someone and their work. It's just an altered framing of money. And I think that's probably a vibe that, or people are trying to identify with that type of vibe too. How are we treating these digital financial wonky instruments that are being developed and created for us in a sense?
It's definitely an interesting time, I think, in this early stages of the NFT meta forming.
I wanted to touch on something that you said a minute ago, specifically about NFTs, but that I think applies much more broadly. It's just like the idea of building community, right? And I think community is wielded as an implement in so many of these things, right? Like it is used to kind of make that mob mentality. Like so many of these, I'm sure everybody gets randomly tagged in, like, somebody being, trying to get them on some new NFT, and you see these people that buy these iterative, generative 10,000 profile pic, whatever, clear rugs, or people who buy, like, whatever, shitcoin, and, like, attach community, quote unquote community to it. Like, if community is ultimately, like, plus EV, how do we build, like, a genuine and authentic community? Because I feel like so far a lot of people just will fall for, oh, this looks like a community because people are posting constantly and there's a Discord, and I'm sure that stoned mutant fuck bears are going to make me rich.
Yeah, I think it's a random walk. I think if you were to, try and predict which projects are going to have a good community, I think it's essentially random, which obviously makes it difficult. But I think that just harks back to being genuine. And it's difficult from the outside to filter that information and make a judgment call on the quote unquote quality of the community. But I think if you're genuinely a part of it, then it doesn't really matter, in a sense. Yeah, I don't know how you would go about building a community,
it's an interesting
specifically
thing, right?
Like, yeah.
Yeah, the idea of, like, how do you make something that is genuinely with people's best interest, right? And part of that goes along with the idea of responsibility. Like if you build a community and then you abandon it and take your $3.4 million and go, buy your condo in Miami and vanish. I mean, that, that is kind of comes down to this idea of trust, or this idea of like belief that I think is hard to quantify, and I think it's hard to capture. I also think like if there was an easy answer there, or like a clear answer, then things would be so much different and we wouldn't see people getting rugged on a regular basis. But like, I guess to take that further, is that like one of our like roadblocks towards getting more people involved? I mean, you got to imagine if you're like some rando, fucking normie, and you see one of the first things you see is like an NFT scam on the news, or like you finally get on crypto Twitter and Zach is like, nuking some shill project from orbit. You're like, well, wait, am I like actually in full dark forest mode?
Yeah, I think it's difficult because the quantity of bad things outweighs the good, and probably also the gravity of it. Look at something like Luna, which destroyed a lot of people's lives. So I think it's very easy to have that opinion without being involved and kind of intimately part of the community. So I definitely don't blame anyone for thinking that or anything like that. And it's definitely like a huge issue for us to overcome, but it's really just the same in any industry. I think it's just that ours is maybe more public, or some of the figures are quite outrageous to people who aren't in the space. So I definitely understand that people are wary, and it's not something that you want to treat lightly, because you can get scammed, or you can get fished and have your Bored Ape stolen or something.
Well, you deserve it for holding a Bored Ape. I mean, that just goes with the jam, and that goes with it. There's also something very funny about saying there are ridiculous characters here when it's 3 VR anime people talking to each other. Like, I guess maybe, self-seriousness aside, like, and not asking in any way to make a prediction, but like, do you think that the next, X amount of time after the fallout of Luna, and after the fallout maybe of NFT rugs getting more popular, and et cetera, do you think like we are set back a ways from more participants joining the ecosystem? Do you think we're going to see a period maybe where the eye of the world turns away from us in terms of people being like, oh, I should jump into crypto now, even though arguably it could be the best time?
I think that's sort of just human nature in a sense. I think it's kind of unavoidable. I think people, I'm not sure how to say this, but I think it's definitely unavoidable, unfortunately. Things go in cycles, and most people don't enter at the right time because that's the most unattractive time to enter.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who bought the top many times, or like would re-enter things at the top, I completely understand that. And it goes to that meme of, people being like, oh, I'm a buyer of Bitcoin at 28, and then 28 comes around and people are like, I'm not buying here, this looks like shit. And it's like, well, when is your entry point? I just more like imagine that for like a very let's say uncultured, in the sense of like the way CT uses cultured, like people would look at everything that's happened over the last few months and be like, I'm actually not going to join this, and they're put off for another year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and that is like that's a real bummer to me, because now seems like the time where we could use as many new, fresh sets of eyes and ideas as possible.
It's really a struggle, I think, because from matching that perspective would be the sense of you have someone on the outside looking in and being like, oh my god, this place is rampant with awful scams, and the tech is to some extent environmentally destructive and stuff. And the optimistic approach that it seems like you've outlined, Kitsune, is, I want to join and fix this space, and I want to improve the space, and I think there's good stuff here, and I want to make it better. As opposed to the negative reaction we're increasingly seeing, I think, which is either everything's a scam, or it all needs to be completely banned outright, or we need to regulate the shit out of it in terms of just lock and key everything down and put a stranglehold on everything, and make sure we're developing it quote unquote the right way. It's just bizarre to see all the different reactionary takes to everything that's happening.
I think it's completely natural. I think it is scary, especially the less you know, the scarier it is. And from like a protection regulatory point of view, most people haven't had issues with the government or banks or any of these gatekeepers. So their natural instinct is to allow them, quote unquote, to protect people. But I think it's just the nature of a permissionless environment. You're going to have the bad and you're going to have the good. I don't think there's any avoiding that, but to discount the good because of the bad is quite naive and dumb. And I think, just going back to one of the previous questions, I think moving forward, a lot more people will have issues with the government and will have issues with banks specifically, which will probably change their tune a little bit about the benefits of this permissionless world that we're creating.
Do you think that drives more people to ground, like in the sense of like, as regulation increases, more and more, like, probably traditional companies, VCs, traditional asset managers, traditional participants in a financial system will come in, and probably, the rest of us who either want decentralization or felt excluded from the system will probably just, either go deeper underground or fight maybe a Pyrrhic battle that they win or don't win. Like, what is, the long-term fear there, I guess? Is it like, if the government comes to town, do we just keep making more and more layers and abstract things further and further and further away and try and keep, along the razor's edge of their understanding? Or, at a certain point, do we just like capitulate entirely and just be like, well, the US government's here and we're fucked, so that's it. I guess we're just playing this game now.
Yeah, I don't think people will capitulate entirely. I think, there'll always be these, cypherpunk types that will be constantly pushing the envelope and on the bleeding edge of technology, and there's no way that regulations can keep up with that in any sense. But I also think there will definitely be more regulations coming. But I think there's a huge spectrum in between those two poles, which is going to be really interesting, I think, especially as more and more people become dissatisfied with these gatekeepers. I don't really know how things are going to play out, but it's going to be interesting. That's how much I know.
Do you have I'm curious, and Kitsune and I would be seeing this from an American perspective. So what we're seeing here is, we had this big open published letter of 26 technology, figures.
Technologists.
Yeah, and technologists, self-proclaimed, perhaps prominent figures. I haven't looked in the validity, but they're like, here's why you need to be super written to our legislators here in the States of here's why you need to be super critical of the Web3, the industries coming in and trying to influence legislation through things like potential methods like regulatory capture. I guess I'm kind of curious, like, your perspective on that as a concept, in the sense of, is it potentially more of a good or bad thing that larger players in the space are trying to have a say in shaping how governments legislate, or because I can see both ways, from the sense of our legislators, at least stateside, in my experience, listening to hearings and things, like, a lot of them do not understand the technology or what's at stake and everything that's involved. But I can also see a common opposition theme I have is, you're going to have large companies who are only acting in their best interest. They're going to do regulatory capture and create things that favor them and crush competition. Like, I'm just curious what your perspective is on that, and I guess I don't know if that's happening in your country either.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I can't really speak to the local specifics. I try to avoid any sort of news at all, to be honest, even if it's crypto related. But as far as these influential people fighting one way or another for the space. I think there's definite room for people to co-opt this as an ultimately negative thing, especially technology companies and Web2 companies and things like that. But I guess the premise of what we're trying to build, is immutable systems where people's incentives kind of, regardless of whether they're thinking in a selfish sense, work out for the betterment of the system. So I think it's really just going to put to the test what we're actually trying to build.
I think speaking of what we are trying to build, it feels so nebulous and feels so big. I feel like everybody has different reasons for wanting to participate. Do you have kind of maybe an ideology or a driving, ethos that has sustained you in this space and kind of driven what you want to do? Do you have some, it can be a lofty vision or even naive, wishes for the world that you think this enables?
I wouldn't maybe go that far, but I think a driving concept for me is I don't like being told what to do. So I don't like banks and things, gatekeeping and saying you can't do this or making things really difficult. And that's sort of the driving force behind why I'm fundamentally bullish on this space.
I think that's, as good and pure. I mean, so many, not wanting to be told what to do, I think is as good a goal as anyone can have. And I also think the idea of, can extend further. We are increasingly told what to do and increasingly constrained by the tenets of our reality and the tenets of our governments and certainly by our financial systems. Do you find that you tend to I don't know, judge the motivations of others? Or do you feel any reason is good as any reason? If you are here to just make money or you're here in and out, you don't believe in vision? Or do you find yourself pretty much strictly gravitating towards people that have that longer term, maybe ideological view?
No, I definitely wouldn't judge anyone for any approach, unless you're straight up grifting, actually stealing money from people and preying on people. But if you're here just to make money, I think more power to you. You, for the betterment of your family or yourself, you should be trying to make money. So I definitely don't judge anyone at all for their approach, unless they're being dishonest and scamming people. Yeah.
I'm maybe making a slight pivot here, and I'm sure this will probably come as no surprise to you, but V and I got probably more questions from the general public to ask of you than anyone else I have thus far interviewed. Many people are very curious about you, and
your reputation precedes you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that you have some fans. So to kind of draw back from larger market or ecosystem conversations, one of the things that we really want is to know the anon behind the PFP, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And as I always include this with a caveat, as much as you want to share or as little as you want to share is fine. But one of the big things about your presence and the things that people ask about, and something that I feel very personally attached to, is you seem to have really immaculate taste in food and drink. Where did that kind of love of fine dining or cocktails or mixed drinks or these nice things, where does that come from?
I don't know the root cause of it. I just like nice things, and I like things to look good. My front end team's probably hating me for it right now, but I have aesthetics is something that really appeals to me. And it doesn't have to be hollow aesthetics, but
I think it stands out particularly, jokes and bear market memes aside, it does seem a lot of people, particularly very young participants in our space, kind of eat like shit and drink like shit, or very much are on the cup of noodles train, and it seems like it
They're all
really like
broke,
distinguishes you. Like you post like pictures of really nice charcuterie or like really nice like cheese boards, like things like that seem to stand apart, and it just feels very uncommon in our space.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of of the opinion that you should sort of treat yourself and enjoy your life. So I think there's no shame in you know, spending money on yourself, even consumables like food or drinks. And you know, you don't need to post pretty pictures of it, but I think just doing the things that you like. You know, I like nice food, so I wanna cook nice food for myself. And I don't think there's anything to be ashamed about that. And maybe it's an age thing. I'm 237, so I've been around a little while. So,
like certainly like no shame when people are, you know, flashing like their Rolexes or their brand new car, like that the ambition, you know, the meme of like, you know, wanting the Lambo. I guess on that like, you know, material goods thing, a question we got that I had never even considered, but do you have like a personal like fashion sense? Like what is your style like?
I don't really know how to pinpoint my style, to be honest. I definitely don't have a strong, you know, theme to my style. Like as far as a fashion sense, I think I'm quite diverse in that sense. Like I'm wearing all black right now with a Brooklyn Nets jersey over a hoodie, and some Vans.
Oh, it's not comfy cat girl style? Oh.
Yeah, I mean, we did receive a number of requests for clarification on tights versus thigh highs, so I think people were going to be pretty heartbroken to hear that there is no... I guess, you know, that's also like a differentiating point is like, you know, aesthetically, I feel like many people are just like, you know, you see those memes of people posting their apartments and it's like a mattress on the floor with a camp chair and a computer, and like I find like a real kind of like grim like joylessness to that. Like there is like this real sense of like, I don't know, like enforced austerity, like somehow depriving yourself of things that make you happy or things that bring you pleasure will make you a better trader or less like attached. But I don't know, I feel like my motivations to have like nice things in my life and things that make me happy are probably more of a driving factor in what I do than any like arbitrary dreams of, you know, getting $100 million.
And they project that onto other people too. You know, you hear the meme of, oh God, if the dev gets a girlfriend, we're all screwed.
I mean, I do subscribe to that. The lock of the devs in a room. They should never be allowed to date. Yeah. To keep them as unhappy.
It's like applied to the same principle, though. It's like,
yeah.
You know, getting something that potentially finding a partner that makes them happy, but that detracts from their dev work or, you know, making $100 million or...
I like my devs depressed and focused, you know, keeping them hungry, keep them sharp in a pit, you know, with just a glimmer of sunlight at the end of the tunnel.
I think people maybe see it as a sign of weakness or something. But at the end of the day, it's you're living your life, so if you want to surround yourselves with things that you like, then more power to you, I think. I don't think there's any shame in that.
I mean, on the subject of things you like, do you have a favorite cocktail?
I basically just drink gin.
Oh my god, yes.
Like a gin and tonic. So I post a few to Twitter. I post more in Discords, but I'm a very big gin fan, and we're very lucky to have a lot of really good gin distilleries down here. I'm kind of spoiled.
No docs, but I used to distill gin for a living, so I love gin. Gin is like one of my great passions, and I feel like anytime I meet or talk to somebody who loves gin, I feel like this rush because so many people are like, gin fucking sucks because I got blackout on 5 o'clock gin in college and now I hate gin. And it really does feel like one of those signifiers to me of people. I'm like, oh, your stock has risen exponentially in my book because you like gin, which I feel like, you know, there's like an element of refinement there. I mean, I guess, you know, gin and tonics, I do have like, if aside from cocktail, do you have like a favorite food?
Oh, favorite food. I think it would be sushi, probably.
Oh, near and dear to my heart. Sushi's mine too.
You're batting 1,000 right now. You're really crushing it.
Oh, brilliant! It's just
I did my homework. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, there's a huge variety in sushi, but just Japanese in general make amazing food, and I love it. And it's kind of one of the only things I can't really cook. So,
do you cook a lot? Are you a big cook?
I am. Yeah. I've recently been doing it a lot more. But I really enjoy it. I find it's really calming, and it's really comforting, especially cooking for other people. I find is just really heartwarming, and it tastes better than what you can buy, I think.
I feel like the cooking probably goes hand in hand with what you post, but a question that we got was, do you have an activity that you really enjoy that would surprise everyone on crypto Twitter if they knew?
It's an interesting question. I have honestly abandoned a lot of hobbies over the past couple of years in favor of crypto and working. I work a lot, so I don't really find the time that much to spend on hobbies and things. Growing up, I always did a lot of music, so I DJ and play guitar and drums and a little bit of piano, so maybe that's something that people don't really know too much.
I love whenever someone says they do music. Can you tell us what kind of music, what genre?
Yeah, so obviously the DJing stuff, I have like a Mixcloud with a couple of mixes on there under Miyuki, and that's more like house techno style, deep house and kind of melodic techno. I like the use of harmonies and things. But then on the other end of that is my guitar playing, etc., is all like metal, quite heavy metal. So
this is the second metal-related guest that we've had, and both times it's been an absolute surprise to me. I feel like I have no. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Not saying that everybody on CT with like an anime PFP is listening to like J-pop nightcore remixes, but like the idea that it's metal, like when we're talking, like how heavy are you playing that guitar? How heavy is the metal?
So two bands that I really like, and I was listening to one this morning when I went to get my coffee, was Meshuggah. They have an album that came out recently, a couple of months ago, which is really good. And the Dillinger Escape Plan are also really good. So if anyone knows those two bands, that kind of signifies how heavy, I guess.
I wonder how many of the Zoomers are into metal. I wonder like how many of them heard that and like, what the fuck are you doing?
I feel like, as an aside too, it seems like there's more of a push to get more people on CT to like show more of their non-CT. I mean, partially with the meme, like the bear markets are down, but like you have like the Crypto Soup group and was it? I think it was Jin from Metaverse Makers. A couple folks were like, "Oh, I'd love to see more CT people like post their gardens and fucking Indie sharing pictures of moths."
That was the character arc twist that we all needed.
Yeah, which I mean, just like a brief tie back to the whole like, no, we need our devs or we need traders like depressed and no hobbies and stuff. I mean, I think it's more reassuring to see especially like if you're looking at it from an outside point of view, like seeing people in the space and they're not all glued to the screens looking at charts. It's like, no, these are people. These are actual people with a diverse set of hobbies, and crypto is something that all kind of unites us, brings us together, but it's just one subset of many things that we're all interested in.
Yeah, I really like that part personally. I think I love seeing people's passions and things they're actually interested in. I really like seeing that. There's a few plant posters on Twitter that I really like, because I'm very much into plants as well. So seeing these things that humanize people and ground them is really nice. And there's nothing I love more than seeing someone enjoy something that they like, whether I like it or not. So I encourage everyone to post more of that stuff, especially going into the bear market.
I think that is something that people were initially hesitant about, just in interest of like trying to maintain like OPSEC and anonymity. But it has been nice to see people share more and more. And I think, so much of that takes place in like group chats or whatever. But definitely, like from where I began to now, I feel so much more comfortable sharing like aspects of my life or my hobbies with people. Like a whole group chat has like full photos of like my hand tattoos because I was like, I have these at work.
Well, I know we had talking about like humanizing activities and stuff. We had another question, but do you have a favorite, like a novel or a story or any type of like in terms of reading material?
I don't read all that much, to be honest. I used to read more when I was younger, and I remember Hunter S. Thompson being a really great writer, and I feel like he would be a really good Twitter shitposter if he was still alive, and I would have loved to see that, to be honest.
Maybe that's like a good leading question. Like if you could, well, it's funny because we just got fucking Martin Shkreli on Twitter now, but like if you could have one like celebrity interact with you on Twitter in a crypto setting, like who would you want it to be? Or like one writer, one famous person, one historical figure. Like if you could be in a group chat with one person in history, who would it be?
That's a really tough question. If I hadn't said Hunter S. Thompson before, I probably wouldn't know an answer, but I'm going to go with Hunter S. Thompson. I feel like his ethos and his humor would really fit in with our space, and I would definitely simp him.
I feel like Hunter S. Thompson probably had a lot of simps in his lifetime as well, until they did the Hunter S. Thompson daily diet and then immediately died.
Yeah. I feel like if he was reincarnated, he would be on Twitter right now, 100%.
Miyu, do you have a favorite anime?
I do. I think Neon Genesis.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. That's so good.
I don't know what it is exactly about it. I think it's, the themes, which for me sort of boil down to loneliness and acceptance.
For me, it's because of my relationship with my father. The most stable Ava fan meme. Like it's just, it is such a again, liking Jin, I feel like it tells me volumes about a person.
Yeah, I love it, and it's quite old now, but I think it's something that everyone should watch. I think those final 2 episodes, which I know were somewhat controversial, but I really enjoyed the original ending. I feel like it actually discussed the actual themes of the show, and anything in the plot that wasn't wrapped up, I don't really care about.
Did you watch the Rebuild movies? Did you like them? I have people having such mixed, because I really liked them, but also I feel like it's because like I'm now old and I was like, oh my god, just 4 movies instead of having to rewatch the whole thing, and it like looks updated.
Yeah, I'm hesitant because I enjoyed the original so much. I'm kind of like, well, that is the story in a sense. So I'm hesitant, but I should go and do it.
Who's your favorite Ava character?
It's got to be Ray, I think.
That is such a telling answer.
I don't know if I just want to save her. I'm not sure, but definitely drawn to Ray.
What is it about Ray that like so appeals to you?
I don't really know. Maybe I am just like Shinji. So that's why I like Ray.
He's just like me, for real.
For real. Yeah. I can't pinpoint it, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe the like question most people ask is like, who do you simp for? Misato. But like the idea of like who you relate to that show, I feel like really holds up a mirror to yourself.
Yeah, I'd rather not say Shinji, but I think I do relate to Shinji on a personal level.
Yeah, I mean, that's, that is what it is. There's no shame in admitting that. I think we're all a little bit Shinji there sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just need to be told to get in the fucking robot once in a while.
I mean,
I do.
I'm a Ryoji Kaji enjoyer, because I also want to like die being a double agent for the woman I love, because that seems like the best possible ending.
Yeah.
I always like to insert something here, but do you have something that you're like working on in particular, or something that you have in the works that you feel like really passionate about that you want to share, or any like teasers for things that you've got upcoming that you think like you would want people to know about that you feel passionate about?
I mean, I'm definitely working on something that I'm passionate about and would love to share. But even mentioning it is probably too much of a giveaway. So,
V, I don't even know why you keep that question in.
Well,
Every fucking time I ask that question, I'm like, what? Why am I saying that? I'm asking someone to just give away something they're working on.
Well, but people could have like a side project or passion project or other stuff they're working on. It's going to be hit or miss.
One time I'm going to ask someone that, and they're going to just drop a bomb. They're going to be like, actually,
oh yeah, they're going to be. This is the reveal.
Yeah, I'm doing it on this show.
I mean, I would love to be honest. I would love to share it all right now. But it would cheapen the overall experience, I think.
Well, this show is all about cheapening people's experiences. That's
no, not in that sense. It's we're kind of building up to a big reveal, I guess. So
a plan and everything. So
yeah,
even mentioning what it is would spoil it.
Just Papa John style. Just watch this space and stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Exactly.
Stand by. Stay tuned. Do you have a favorite like Twitter personality? Like, is there someone that you like? Notifications are on. You are glowing every time you see them tweet.
Oh yeah. There's two. I think one is G, D-Chain Spartan, who I just love the way that he thinks and the way that he writes and his honesty, which is really great. And then the other person is Twickerties, who is just the most hilarious and the most hilarious account and the best shit poster by far. Untouchable in my opinion. So big shout out to Twickerties.
Who do you think? Do you have someone that you think is like criminally underrated that you would want to like blow up?
Yeah, I have two people I think are criminally underrated. They're not like necessarily small accounts, but I still feel like they should easily be 10x of where they are. The first one is Anon. He has this number. It's Anon 7537499.
The Pepe picture.
The Pepe
picture, yeah.
Yeah. Words.
I feel like they're very, very smart, and they have some really great takes, and I feel like they should definitely be much bigger. And then the other one is Emily from eGirl, who is quite a large account, but they are incredibly smart and just a all-around great person. So I definitely feel like she deserves a lot more praise. And
God damn it, V, if 10,000 followers is underrated, you and I are like just we are cooked. There's not even okay, well,
we just have to.
I think it's more of a
absolutely.
It's less about the numbers. I think it's more a statement on the quality. I think.
Quality of content and
my quality of content is terrible. So now my head is sinking onto the desk.
I don't even.
Before the next episode, you have just a rebrand.
I gotta do a rebrand. I gotta do a full pivot. I gotta do some Lindy Ape style arcs. Oh, here's a good one. A question coming in from all of our dear friend, Dr. Lawrence Day. Which crypto Twitter account would people most believe was your alt if you admitted to it? Who do you think would be like people if you were like, this is my alt? People would be like, oh my God, of course, it makes so much sense now.
I guess I would say my actual alt, which is Viscontes.
I knew it the whole time.
See, exactly. Folks, it happens just like that.
No, in all seriousness, I'm not sure. That's a really good question, Lawrence.
I'll give him that. He doesn't need that. He doesn't need you to get. He doesn't need you to get. Yeah, Mark said we got to delete a compliment to Laura. It's not getting out for free. It's the Platinum Jubilee. The British have enough.
No, in post we'll record something else.
Yeah,
like
it's just dub it over. Yeah, in like a clearly different voice. Like, that's actually a terrible question, Lawrence. There actually, I mean, that kind of leads into like an interesting question that I think was probably like a shit post question, but I think actually has something like, why do you choose to remain anonymous? Like why did you choose to be an anonymous figure? I guess that question applies to all of us, and we probably all have our reasons, but
yeah, that's an interesting question. Like, I'm not super concerned about doxing to people that I like. Obviously, I'm voice doxing right now, and doxing the fact that I'm not actually a cat girl. But
what? The count, the follower count just drops precipitously.
It's gone.
You just watch the numbers tick down.
But as far as a big inspiration for my account, it was Alice Comfy. There was an immediate. I was drawn to their account immediately, and they were one of the first people that I followed when making the Miyuki account. There was just something about the way they portrayed themselves and the anonymity surrounding that was really appealing. I can't really pinpoint the exact reasons, but I think, going back to what we were talking about earlier, it just allowed me to portray these parts of myself without any kind of fear or shame or, someone in my real life reading it and getting the wrong idea or something like that.
It's funny. I think someone cited Alice as an inspiration before, and I do think there's like a kind of this, for me, honestly, it was like Indy was a big inspiration when I was making my account, just because I'm like, I saw a very prescient take and then saw immediate like femboy pornography, and I was like, that must feel so nice to just get to be yourself in that way, or get to like not have that fear of any type of self-censorship.
Yeah, I love indie, and I would probably put them also in the underrated category. I think very highly and very fondly of Indigo.
Yeah, I mean, the last question here that we had on our list was a question from Indy that just says, "Will you date me?"
You know the answer to that, Indy. I've been waiting and waiting. Where were these questions asked, by the way?
A shadowy group chat that will remain nameless.
Oh.
Remain nameless, yes. One of the many, many shadowy group chats that exist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess on that note, I always just like to extend genuine thanks. It's not always easy, not just voice doxing, but, having a bit of a spotlight put on yourself and sharing, personal details about yourself and your story. So we're very grateful. Speaking on behalf of me and Vee, this is our first episode co-hosting, so it's weird to have to move to the plural term for us. But yeah, we really appreciate you coming on and being so like open and candid, and for sharing your extremely soothing voice. I feel like this might be our most like comfy ASMR episode yet.
Oh, well, I thank you for inviting me on. I'm not gonna lie, it was a little nerve-wracking, but it was a really fun conversation, and I really appreciate it. Having the spotlight on me is not something that I'm used to, even in text form. So in voice form, it's even more daunting. But you guys are really great, so I really enjoyed it.
I mean, to our listeners, please please retweet this one, and please put the spotlight on Miyuki. We gotta get those numbers up. So.
No, I mean, thank you again though for coming on. And do you have any final thoughts, last words, anything you want to share, or any wise words of wisdom to give to folks?
Oh, I don't know about wise words. That's probably out of my purview. But I would just say, be nice to people. It goes a long way, and I think just be nice and be genuine, and don't be afraid to reach out to people.
And with that sentiment in mind, our usual plug here, If you have a story that you want to share, there's nothing too small or innocuous. There's nothing that is not interesting. We want to hear everyone's stories out there. So if you feel like you want to step into the spotlight like Miyu has today, please reach out to us. Please get in touch and please share, because you have two very attentive listeners here and whole dozens of theoretically attentive listeners at home.
Dozens of us. Dozens.
All right. On that note, Miyu, thank you again. Vee, thank you. It's a pleasure as always. And we will be back next week on Sunday with a brand new episode. If you are so inclined, please like, share, subscribe, leave a review for us on your podcast application or platform of choice, because it helps us out a lot. And we will see you next time.
Thanks so much for listening. Thanks again, Miyu, for coming.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone. I love you.
We love you too.
You too.